Okay, it's noon. Let's go ahead and get started. And as most of y'all know, we are recording this and it'll be available for on the website. So if anyone comes in late, it'll be fine. We'll also have a transcription there. So thank you all for joining in. We really appreciate the participation. Um, this year will be the 13th annual troubleshooting skills competition, which is exciting. So we're going to move through the webinar and give you some information about the upcoming competition. Some you'll find is the same and some is new. Um, First of all, for those of you who are new to the competition or might be joining to find out what it's about, the competition showcases the problem-solving skills of PTech students from across the nation. It's a two-round competition. We have a qualifying round in which you will compete online at your home campus. And then we have the championship round in which you compete in person at the hosting campus. This year, the hosting campus is San Jacinto College in Pasadena, Texas, and the competition will be held at CPET, which is the Center for Petroleum, Energy, and Technology in Pasadena, and we'll give you more information about that as we move through the webinar and the competition. Just a note here as we move through this, if you do have a question that you need to ask urgently, if you just use the tool to raise your hand, and then otherwise we will cover any questions that you have at the end. So for registration itself and the qualifying round, we have registration for the competition open on the NAPTA website. Registration will close on February 21st. So your team, before closure, you must provide your team's name and the team member names by this deadline. We also have a new function this year where you will need to upload a photo ID of each team member, including the alternate, as you register them. And I didn't put a bullet on here, but there is a little mini competition within the competition for team names, and you win a prize, and we'll also be promoting that on social media. So as you're building, choosing your members for your team, you would also be wanting to think about what they want to use for their team name, because you will need to lock that in when you register them on the website. The final bullet point here, alternates must be designated at registration, and your team's alternate may not be changed after the qualifying round. So say you already know who your team members will be. Excuse me just a second. Let me turn my phone on silent. Say you already know who your team members will be, and you go in next Monday to put in your team member names along with your alternate names, and you upload their photo IDs, and you've got it all taken care of. And then something happens to someone's schedule and you need to switch your alternates. Um, you can do that up until participation in the qualifying round. After you participate in the qualifying round, you cannot change your alternate. More points on that. A couple of years ago, we opened up this competition to NAPTA member and non-member colleges. So non-member colleges can participate. An unlimited number of colleges can participate in the qualifying round, thanks to our sponsors and the way that the qualifying round is set up. So we are very appreciative of Simtronics and Sistran and the help that they give us to make that possible. An unlimited number of teams from each registered college can participate. So say you have a huge program and you want to have 12 teams participate in the qualifying round, you can do that. Teams must have 3 team members to compete. We really encourage you to bring an alternate, and we will be welcome if you say that your team progresses past the qualifying round to the championship round. That your alternate can travel with you to the championship round, and they will be welcome to participate in all of the day one activities, but they won't participate in the championship round and in the scoring aspect of it. We will have activities for them to participate in, though. It just the activities that your alternate engages in on day 2 of the championship round will not be factored into the score of your team. After the qualifying round, which will close, we'll get to that in a minute, but the qualifying round will close on April 1st. All of the teams will be scored. And then the top 12 highest scoring teams will advance as national finalists to the championship round of the TSC, with the limitation that only 2 teams from any single college can advance to the championship round. So going back to that hypothetical where you are one of the bigger schools with a huge program and you enter 12 teams into the qualifying round. Say that 4 of your teams are placed in the top 12 highest scoring teams, which is lovely. Only the top 2 scoring teams from your particular college will be able to actually advance to compete in the championship round. And then another caveat, the finalist team must travel to the host school to compete because it will be in person, and more to come on that. We have several resources for you, especially if you're new to the competition, but even if you're not, I would encourage you to read through these documents. We're currently working with our website services provider to upload the new versions, but they for sure will be available for you as of tomorrow morning. So just make a note to read through those. It's the ones that we have listed here, and they will be available under the TSC tab on the NAPTA website, which is naptaonline.org. So the qualifying round format. The teams will compete using a web-based system from each of their home campuses. It includes 3 timed scenarios, and your team will compete at a time and date that you will choose based on communication with your team and their schedules. So thanks to the services and generosity of our sponsors, we are able to offer you a window of time and be relatively flexible on this. So your teams can compete in the qualifying round anywhere from March 18th through April 1st. We tried to look at most of the colleges' spring break schedules and find a window of time that at least one day of that window would work for everyone. So you need to choose, after you build your team, you need to choose and schedule your team's qualifying round location on your home campus. And that's obviously up to you, whether it's a classroom, testing room, computer lab, whatever works best for your team. You want to definitely plan ahead to ensure that you have internet access. You may want to use 2 monitors. Many of the competition teams do in the qualifying round, to have that extra acreage as they're viewing the tools that are available. You will need to assign a proctor for your team's competition in the qualifying round. That needs to be someone that is not in your P-Tech department, not another instructor or something like that. Then when you have chosen your time and date for your qualifying round and your proctor, you need to notify us of your choices. So you'll receive an email with a form from NAPTA that you'll need to fill out to register your proctor, and let us know so we can schedule your qualifying round and work with David Hirsch and his team to make sure that we have availability of all resources. Then David's going to go into this more in just a minute, but you will have opportunity, and it's not just an opportunity, you need to work with him on the information that he's going to send you to confirm that you can access the LMS to take your QR, and David will tell you more about that. And then your team will log into the website to do their competition in the QR during your scheduled time with your proctor in the room. The proctor is the only one who's allowed in the room, and our documents go into this, but the competition teams are not allowed to take backpacks or electronic tools or anything like that into the room. It's just them and the proctor. And we have had questions of whether or not they can have paper and pencils, and yes, that's okay. All right, so with that in mind, I will turn it over to David. And David, if you'll just let me know when you want to proceed through the slides.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the qualifying round will consist of three scenarios that will be presented digitally through a learning management system. As part of this process, as soon as registration closes, each team will get an email to their coach, or if you have multiple coaches, because of the number of teams, you'll get emails with access for each team to connect to the LMS and practice going through a scenario. The intent here is as much for us to guarantee there'll be no problem on the day of the competition with your facility being able to get internet access, no security issues or, blocks in any way. So that's why it's so important to verify this now. And then the other opportunity is just to set an expectation for your students on the team of what the competition day will be like. So they'll get a URL, and the URL will take them to a website, which is where the NAPTA competition learning management system is stored. And they'll immediately begin by entering in a username, which will be provided in the email to the coaches, along with a password. When the day before the actual QR starts, all of those emails and accounts will be closed off. So during this period of time between the end of registration and the start of the competition, you'll have a chance to practice getting in to the system, but know that once the competition starts, everyone gets locked out, and then your account gets turned on the day that you choose to compete. Can you hop to the next slide?
Give me just a minute. It's not. There we go.
All right. So when you enter the LMS, there's a dashboard. When you enter it to practice, you'll see just one entry, which you'll click on and begin. For the day of the competition, there'll actually be 3 scenarios listed. The requirements are set up so that you can't enter scenario 2 until you complete scenario 1, and you can't enter scenario 3 until you complete scenario 2. So they do have to be completed in order. Can you go to the next slide? When you launch the scenario, it'll bring you to a screen that looks very similar to this. And you'll notice in the bottom right corner, there are navigation arrows to go backwards and forwards, and you'll progress into the scenario. Next slide. The first thing that's there is going to be instructions. These instructions are very important to follow. Just above where that arrow points, there's actually access to a set of resources. The competition consists of a set of screens, which we'll see in just a second, that show a particular scenario. It's the displays from the simulator along with the trends, and a tabular view of the data in addition to the graphical trend data. The other information that is available is a copy of the training manual that came with that model. So if students want to look at the process description for that model, they can. The key thing to do is they need to open both of those up so that they can look at the screens from the simulator and they can also look at whatever information is provided in the training manual. They'll actually enter their answers into the LMS, which we'll see in just a second. The key to this scenario on the LMS is that there's a timer that's running automatically. And so you want to make sure that you submit before the end of that time, or when time concludes, it'll automatically exit you, and wherever you were, those answers will be recorded. But if you didn't answer some of them, then there'll be no credit given. So it's important that they keep track of time. And as I said, there's a little timer that will appear in the upper right-hand corner of the screen while the scenario is in action. Next screen. All right, so let's go ahead and go through what some of the screens will look like. There'll be an introductory screen, and then go ahead. Like I said, you could be able to pull down a typical manual. It'll be in a PDF format, so you should be able to open it in a browser. One of the reasons why we recommend 2 monitors is so you can have the training manual on one screen and the display slides for the scenario on a second screen. Go ahead. So what do the questions look like that the students are going to have to answer? They're going to all be multiple choice questions, very similar to this, where they'll be asked a series of questions. Some of them are general process knowledge questions, and some of them are very much related to the scenario that they have the evidence to look at. Go ahead. So those questions that they'll be asked will be everything from what do the symptoms look like that they're seeing on the screen, to answering questions about, based on the data available, what are the possible causes, and then what would be the potential remedies. If you'll go back 1 second. But when they're done answering all of the questions, they'll come to this last slide. And this is to avoid submitting before you're done. Up until you get to this slide and click the check mark, you can go backwards. So as the team is working along, if suddenly after they've really thought for a while, they go back, oh, wait a minute, we think we missed something. That's why the back arrow is there. So they can go back to the very first question and change their answers. So the questions are dynamic until you get to this screen. And once you click yes and the check mark, then your answers will be submitted. Can we go to the next screen? And then you'll receive a screen very similar to this that'll say that all of the scores have been, for that scenario, have been uploaded. You can exit the course, and then if your teams want to take a break for a few minutes, relax and then come back in to do the next one, then they'll just go through and repeat the login process. And then the second scenario will have been unlocked as soon as the first scenario was completed. And then they would continue on in that manner. Expect that each of the scenarios are going to take somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes each to complete. Go ahead. So our recommendations, and you don't have to necessarily follow this process, is select your teams as quickly as you can, and then get them practicing on scenarios. Remember, our troubleshooting process requires them to be able to identify the problem, to be able to determine potential causes to that issue, try to identify from that what's the most likely or probable cause, and then determine a corrective action that they would take to solve that. So they need to be able to perform all the different aspects of a troubleshooting process, in addition to being able to answer just fundamental questions about the chemistry and physics of the process at hand. Um, make sure you get your teams registered, as Shannon mentioned before, and then after everyone has competed, and this is probably the hardest part because everyone competes on a little bit different day. Once the very last competitor has finished, all of the results will be tabulated, presented to the judges, and then announced to the coaches. And then from that selection, you'll continue on to the championship round. The key here is to select a qualifying round date that your teams can absolutely make. We've had some challenges in the past. We understand, the occasional flat tire does happen, but we've had a couple of occasions where 2 out of the 3 team members or 3 out of the 4 team members showed up and one couldn't make it. So we would ask you to really reiterate to the competitors how important it is to make this commitment and then make sure that they block off, communicate with, work or whoever else that, they'll need to be at the troubleshooting, competition qualifying round on a given day and time. It made us really sad to have a couple of teams have to call in and say, some of their members just weren't going to make it. And can't reiterate enough, the value of your alternate. That alternate person has the alternate's been used much more than you would think because of the flat tires. We've had folks that have gotten the flu and couldn't make it, folks that got called into work and couldn't make show. So I mean, there are legitimate reasons that have happened that have prevented a couple of teams in the past from being able to compete, and that's just a shame. So please try to reiterate to your teams and to the alternates how important that aspect is. And then, as Shannon mentioned, once the results are announced, um, there'll be a period of time to prepare for the championship round and then ultimately practice a lot more and come to San Jacinto College CPET, and we'll see you there in April. Does that give a quick, broad overview?
Thanks, David. So obviously I mentioned that it will be at CPET. We'll give you more information on that coming up. Those of you that are potential coaches, if you decide to participate, which we really hope you will, we would love to have we would be ecstatic if we had a team from every college in the nation with the PTech program participating, whether they are NAPTA members or not. But as we work through this information, if you have other questions that come to you after today that you want to ask, feel free to reach out to us at NAPTA, and we will be glad to answer any questions that you have. So what David has mentioned is the qualifying round. That's what will happen in the qualifying round so far. And then after the judges determine the top 12 teams, we'll move to the championship round. So before we move on to the information about the championship round, any questions about the qualifying round? Jeff?
Yeah. Um, he mentioned that until you hit this submit button, you can back up and change your answers. And my question is, if time runs out and you've answered most of the questions and you haven't got to the submit button, does that mean that nothing has been submitted?
No, it basically hits the submit button for you, Jeff. Wherever you are, it automatically just takes and grades whatever's been answered.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other questions about the qualifying round itself before we move to the championship round information? Sorry, David,
The
did
only
you
other
say something?
No, I was going to add the only other thing I would add about the qualifying round is um, any of the core building block process models that are available from 100 to 2000 are kind of fair game. We won't tell you which ones we're going to select each year, but we will tell you that they will come from a lot of the building block models for the qualifying round, and then expect much more comprehensive and complex models in the championship round.
If there are no more questions about the qualifying round, then we will move to the championship round information. And David, please, feel free to jump in here if I get something wrong or leave something out or anything else. So as we mentioned, the top 12 teams, with the caveat that only 2 teams from one particular school can advance. But with that caveat, the top 12 teams will advance to the national championship rounds. There will be 2 days of the competition. All team members are required to participate in the industry-related activities that are scheduled for Thursday, April 24th. But I say will participate because it is mandatory in the code of conduct. But we find from the surveys afterwards of the participants and the coaches that the day one activities are usually the most popular activities. We have multiple very generous industry volunteers who make it possible. We have some really fun but also educational activities that occur on day one, and we'll provide you with more information about that. Um, and then the championship rounds will happen on Friday, and all teams will obviously compete in the live simulation based exercises on Friday, the 25th of April. We'll have 4 timed rounds. And David, do you want to go ahead and take over from here, or you want me to keep going?
No, I'd be happy to. So, a little bit of a nuance here. In the afternoon of Thursday, there will be one of the rounds that's considered one of the 4, will be a hands-on round. I would suggest that judges consider what are the typical types of tasks that new operators would be um, likely to know and be able to do, and that's what the fodder for the criteria for selecting the exercise is going to be about. But rather than be on the simulator, they will be asked to, as a team of 3, solve a hands-on a hands-on exercise that will require them to troubleshoot, but it will not be simulator based. But that aspect of the competition will occur Thursday, and it will be scored. The balance of the remaining 3 rounds will be conducted on Friday, 2 of the rounds in the morning, and then expect a longer round with the virtual field operator that will last around 90 minutes. And then at the conclusion of the 3rd round, the teams will participate in a written knowledge test. I say written, it will likely be delivered this year through a learning management system, a quiz bank. And those scores will be combined, the 3 simulator scores, the scores from the hands-on troubleshooting activity, and the knowledge scores will be combined, similar to what we did last year, together to determine a final score that'll be used to determine the top 3 in the competition.
So the cumulative scores, as David mentioned, from that we'll take the top 3 teams. Trophies will be awarded to the top 3 teams, and all teams advancing to the championship round will receive a national finalist certificate. Our awards ceremony will be held Friday afternoon. However, we're making some changes this year. Typically our lunches, we like to, we do have speakers at most of the breaks, but we're going to have our keynote speakers at lunch this year on Friday. And I find that it's always really, really good information for the teams competing to get to hear. So most of our speakers will be at lunch on Friday. And then the award ceremony will be a more abbreviated activity than it has been in the past for those of you who are going to be repeat coaches. That will basically help in a lot of ways. With having our award ceremony shortened, it'll allow everyone to get back home a little bit earlier, or at least get on the road. And we've taken your feedback and understand that it's a long 2 days for the team members, and that they're generally pretty tired by the time it's over, and I know we are also. So by moving some of these important and very worthwhile activities around, it'll shorten our award ceremony a bit and then allow everyone to start traveling back home. And that's it, basically. Questions?
So before we get to questions, a couple things I did want to add. Last year we had profitability included. That will not be in this year's competition. We're going to go back to basics a little bit with respect to that. We also last year did a combined team activity, and due to the change in the format this year, that also will not be done. So we won't be doing the pairing up activity this year. So just want to clarify, the two activities in the morning will be simulator based. All three members of the team will be together for those two activities. Expect those activities to last roughly 45 minutes apiece with breaks in between. After lunch, we'll have the virtual field operator activity where the teams will be split into two rooms, a console room and a field room. And due to some generous sponsorship and capability, we'll have industrial radios again. So we're going to very much encourage that coaches spend time with your team members to learn how to use proper communication etiquette. And for those of you who have been in the competition or have come back after, when you get 12 teams in one room on a radio and the Motorola radios, actually beep after, you complete each communication cycle, there's quite a bit of noise. And then you go into the other room where the console, or the field operators are, and the same thing. And then you add alarms going on in the background, and, very quickly communication skills become important. And if they don't know how to communicate well in a noisy, dynamic background, that's just going to be a struggle that if we can get the coaches to help the teammates, it will improve their competitiveness. All right, I'm done.
Good point, David. Thank you for bringing that up. A very good point. All right, any questions? Yes, Jeff?
So you mentioned that briefly that in the qualifying rounds that the scenarios that you would be pulling from would be SPMs 100 through 2000. Did you mean through all the way up to like 2000 plus, 2700, for example, 2700, or do you just mean anything in the 100 up to less
Stopping
than?
at 2000, Jeff.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
And
Great
then
question. Thank you.
at the actual competition for the 1, 2, and 3, those could be any SPM?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Exactly.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Kimberly, did you have a question?
Y'all don't
So
be shy now.
since
Go ahead.
everybody's quiet, I was hoping I could share just a couple other things that are some hints and tips to um, prior coaches, as well as anyone in the group that's a new coach this year. We encourage you to teach the students when they're operating the simulator to not treat it as a video game. The scoring system is built to try to capture that. So, for example, if your students want to make enormous moves and kind of, like overcorrect when you're on an icy road, and so you want to have sliding back and forth, the performance scoring utility is going to pick that up, and it will view it negatively. You know, teach them to make small planned moves, teach them to be patient, and make sure that they understand the cause and effect relationship between the move they just made and the effects that they're going to see. The difference between winning teams and losing teams are often, the ones that make very planned moves. They have expectations for what they should see, and they're deliberate about those moves. But the ones that treat it like a video game, those are the ones that you're going to be penalized for certain. We talked a little bit about the communication aspect. And also, the judges play an enormously valuable role in the competition. They're not only there to make sure that everyone has a fair opportunity to compete and win, but they're also there to observe and to share their feedback on what is and isn't done during the competition. And occasionally we'll have teams that, for example, they'll never even open up the training manual. They won't look at the process description. They won't look at the normal operating values. They won't look at the procedures. And so that is, for us, a fundamental building block of preparing, the competitors to do. And so we would encourage you to make sure that that's part of their habit. How they communicate as a team is also very much reviewed. We've had teams that, they've accidentally tripped the unit, and it's been amazing how they've, continued to, positively talk with each other. No, don't lose it, man. Let's stay together. We can get this back online. Come on, we can do it. Now, they may not have won that scenario, but I can tell you the judges were impressed. And remember, the judges are talking to their industry, cohorts after the fact. And when word gets out of the particular team performs very well under pressure, those are the kinds of things that they pick up on and share. They also, I will tell you, share that, when teams can get very frustrated and let that overflow, but that's identified as an issue. We want to see folks deal with the stresses, but in a professional manner. So there are other criteria that are at play here, and the judges also at the end, they are able to spot the students that are methodical about how they go about their troubleshooting process, and the ones that they'll make written comments that they were lost, or somewhere along the way they got lost. So those kinds of feedback we will make sure get back to you as a judge so that your teams will know it this year. But we really rely on the judges to add a set of authenticity and reality to the competition, and their feedback is very much part of that.
Also, just a couple of things. I went through and counted up about, I think we have about 15 or 16 coaches, potential coaches online. If you if you have potential team members who are thinking about competing and they're not sure if they want to, um, we have resources online. There are videos that we have from previous TSC competitions. I was going to say TSC competitions. That's a bit repetitive, but anyway, you get my point. Um, from previous competitors speaking about the competition and what it meant to them and how useful it was. So that's just a tool that you might want to show some of your potential competitors. We also have two new ones that will be online as of next week, I believe. And there's multiple students that even if they didn't win the competition, that they did really well in their mock interviews, or in the day one hands-on activities. Um, and because of the way they interacted with their team members during those day one activities, they received interviews from some of the industry volunteers that are there. And so, while we obviously cannot guarantee real interviews and real jobs to people, and that's not what I'm saying, um, I do want everybody to understand that there's a huge potential through this competition for more positive things to come out of it than even just winning the competition. So and that's happened multiple times in since I joined NAPTA. So I think it's pretty powerful. David also makes a very generous offer, and I cannot speak to him, but I know that if it's important for your students for us to talk to them about the competition and explain more about it and answer their questions, we can set up a time to do that. Um, Sean, were you going to say something?
Yes, ma'am. For those that don't know me, I'm Sean Weemeyer with Formosa Plastics. I also serve on the board for NAPTA. And I just want to thank all the coaches for doing this. It means a lot to me because I'm looking for operators all the time. And I saw this competition, and it's very, very, very well thought out in the way they conduct it. And I'm looking for operators, and I have a judge that's going to be judging there, and I will be there, and I have recruiters that are going to mock interview students, and uh, but I just want to thank all the coaches for being here and doing this and taking time out of their day to coach these kids too. Because when I walked in that room the first time, I got cold chills because I used to be a DCS operator, and it was more than uh, as close to real life as possible. So thank y'all.
Thank you, Sean, and thanks for taking time to be with us here. And I would just like to thank all of y'all coaches, potential coaches, judges, our sponsors that are online, and our board members. Sean, thank y'all for taking time to be here today. And potential coaches, like I said, if you have questions that arise, please reach out to us. We want y'all to participate. We would love it if this was the biggest competition ever in the history of the TSC, and we want to make it possible. Also, for those of you who are new, there's a coach's stipend, because and that's thanks to our generous sponsors. We very much appreciate your time, and we know that it does take time out of your schedule and your free time in your family life. So in appreciation of that, there's a judge's stipend that you will receive thanks to our sponsors. There is a travel stipend that you will receive thanks to our sponsors. We really want to make it as friendly of a process as possible as we can with our existing resources. So if y'all, ponder this, read the documents that'll be online as of tomorrow, watch the videos, show them to your potential team members, and as questions arise, please reach out to us, because we're very excited about the competition. We're very excited that this will be the 13th year. It says a lot for the people who have been involved to make this happen in the past and continue to be involved, that this will be our 13th year. And it's really a unique and very exciting competition. If you're new to it, I would really urge you to to come sign up to be a volunteer and come participate, because it's really a neat thing. And thank you all for your time. And I hope you have a great, if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and hop off, and we will make this recording available online for anyone who missed it. So if you have a friend that's thinking about participating, and they want to watch the video, it'll be online on the NAPTA website, which is naptaonline.org. And thank you all for your time.